Stumbled into the military training base under the sharp morning sun, carrying a load of fresh recruits who thought they were ready for war. Dust clouds kicked up as boots hit the ground, shouts from drill instructors cut through the air like gunfire, and nervous laughter mingled with the clank of duffel bags. Among the sea of young faces, one figure stood out, not because of strength or height or sharpness of uniform. She stood out because of her silence, her careful way of walking, and most of all, her accent. Her name was Elena Markovic. She had come a long way from a tiny village thousands of miles away, seeking not glory, but purpose. Her English was clear enough, but heavy with an Eastern edge that clung to every syllable like an anchor. It marked her instantly as different, and in boot camp, different was dangerous. From the very first lineup, whispers started. Where's she from? Russia? Ukraine? What's she doing here? She can't even say yes, sir, without it sounding weird. Bet she won't last a week. The recruits around her chuckled, nudging each other whenever she spoke. Even the instructors raised eyebrows when she answered roll call with her clipped, accented, "Present, sir." But Elena didn't flinch. She kept her eyes forward, her boots together, her shoulders back. She had learned long ago that silence was stronger than protest. Boot camp was designed to break people down and rebuild them as soldiers. For Elena, it came with an extra layer, the constant sting of being underestimated. During runs, someone would mutter behind her, "Careful, don't trip over those foreign legs." In the mess hall, recruits mimicked her pronunciation of words, laughing into their trays. On the obstacle course, a voice shouted, "Hey, Elena, is this how you climb in your country?" The jokes were endless. And yet, she never fired back. She carried her burden with quiet dignity, pushing herself harder each day, her breath steady, her will unbroken. What no one saw was the discipline carved into her bones long before she arrived at this base. Elena had grown up in a place where conflict wasn't a drill, it was reality. She had listened to radios crackle with real war. She had translated for neighbors, for soldiers passing through, for survivors whispering messages in the dark. But she kept that part of herself locked away. Here, she was just another recruit. Or so they thought. It was week 2 when Sergeant Harris noticed the tension. He was a mountain of a man with a voice that could shatter glass. During rifle drills, he caught wind of recruits laughing as Elena recited instructions under her breath in her accented English. "Something funny back there?" Harris thundered. The group froze. One recruit muttered, "No, sir." But the smirk lingered. Harris turned his attention to Elena. "You, Markovic, step forward." She obeyed, standing rigid, eyes locked on him. "Where you from?" Harris barked. "Originally Serbia, sir." She answered, accent unmistakable. A ripple of chuckles spread through the line. "Quiet!" Harris roared. But the damage was done. The recruits had their reason to single her out. Harris studied her a long moment, then sneered. "Serbia, huh? You're in our army now. That accent better not slow you down." "Yes, sir," Elena replied firmly, though her jaw tightened. From that day, the mockery wasn't just from peers. The drills seemed harsher, the critiques sharper. She was tested more than the others. And yet, she refused to break. While the recruits focused on running times and push-ups, Elena noticed things others didn't. During radio practice, she lingered near the communications tent, listening to the static. She could pick out fragments, odd transmissions no one else seemed to hear. Her ears sharpened on frequencies, on dialects, on tiny slips of language that hinted something more. One evening, as the group rested by the barracks, she heard a pair of soldiers joking about enemy chatter picked up overseas. They repeated a few phrases, butchered beyond recognition. Elena froze. She knew those words. They weren't just random noises. They were coded commands. But she stayed quiet. This wasn't her place. Not yet. By the fourth week, tensions were boiling. The recruits had formed cliques, and Elena remained an outsider. During one field exercise, they were split into squads for a mock operation. Elena's squad groaned when she was assigned to them. "Great, we've got the foreigner," one muttered. "She'll give away our position just by talking." The mission was a disaster, not because of Elena, but because the squad ignored her input. She pointed up a flank they'd overlooked, but no one listened. When the opposing squad ambushed them, her teammates scrambled, shouting accusations. Back at camp, the mocking doubled. "Hey, Elena, maybe try giving commands in your accent, scare the enemy away. Or sing them a lullaby from your country." The laughter rang loud, but underneath it all, a thread of unease lingered. Some had noticed she was sharper than she let on. Some wondered if maybe, just maybe, they were missing something. It was late one night when everything changed. The base was winding down, recruits asleep, lights dim. Then, alarms blared. Sirens cut through the night, red lights flashing across the compound. Soldiers scrambled to positions. In the communications tent, chaos erupted. A live enemy transmission had been intercepted. The problem? None of the on-site translators could crack it fast enough. The language was layered, shifting dialects, fragmented codes. Officers leaned over radios, scribbling notes, cursing under their breath. "What the hell is this? Sounds Slavic, but mixed with something else. Can anyone translate this?" The recruits, dragged from their bunks, gathered nearby in confusion. Elena stood among them, eyes fixed on the tent, her pulse steady. She understood enough of what she'd heard already to know it was urgent. Inside, a major slammed his fist on the table. "We need this translated now, or we're blind out there." A silence fell. No one stepped forward. The transmission crackled on, enemy voices sharp and fast, laced with coded intent. And then, Elena moved. She walked past the stunned recruits, past the instructors who sneered at her every day, past the smirks that had haunted her for weeks, straight into the communications tent. "Sir," she said firmly, "I can translate this." The room froze. Officers turned. Drill sergeants glared. Harris's voice thundered behind her. "Markovic, stand down. This is no place for a recruit." But the major raised a hand. Desperation burned in his eyes. "You understand this language?" Elena's gaze didn't waver. "Yes, sir. I grew up hearing it. I know the dialect, and I know the codes." Murmurs spread through the tent. Some laughed, others scoffed, but the major gestured sharply. "Fine. Sit down. Prove it." She slipped on the headphones. The room held its breath. The enemy voice crackled in her ear, rapid, harsh, distorted through static. To most, it was meaningless noise, but to Elena, it was as clear as childhood lullabies, as sharp as memories of dark nights spent huddled by a radio. She began to translate, her accented English flowing steady and precise. "They are moving, a unit crossing north, concealed in trucks, coordinates given." The major scribbled furiously, his eyes widening. Officers exchanged glances. For the first time since boot camp began, the tent was silent. No laughter, no mockery, just the weight of her words cutting through the noise. The recruits outside craned their necks, whispers spreading. She's actually doing it. Wait, she understands them? That accent, she wasn't lying." Every eye turned to Elena, and for the first time, they weren't mocking. They were listening. The transmission ended. Elena pulled off the headphones, setting them down with steady hands. The major looked up at her, his voice low but powerful. You just saved us from walking blind into an ambush. Harris stood in the doorway, his jaw tight, his usual bark muted. The recruits behind him shifted uncomfortably, their earlier jeers now ashes in their throats. For the first time since she arrived, the silence was not filled with mockery. It was filled with respect. Heavy, undeniable respect. Elena stood at attention, eyes forward, voice calm. Awaiting orders, sir. And in that moment, the accent they had mocked became the voice that everyone depended on. The room was silent, thick with the kind of tension that only comes when a secret is revealed. Elena Markovic had just translated the enemy transmission, her voice steady, her accent unchanged. For a moment, nobody moved. Even Sergeant Harris, who had mocked her since day one, seemed frozen, his massive frame rigid as he processed the weight of her skill. Outside, the recruits whispered among themselves, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. Their laughter, their teasing, all the cruel jokes over the past month, they had vanished like smoke in the wind. They had underestimated her. They had been wrong. But Elena didn't smile. She never had. She knew the danger wasn't over. The transmission was a warning, a coded instruction for enemy forces that could strike at any moment. She had intercepted it in time, yes, but now the responsibility was heavier than ever. The major motioned her closer. His voice was quieter now, almost respectful. Markovic, where did you learn to understand this language and these codes? Elena's eyes flickered for a moment to the maps strewn across the table, to the monitors showing satellite feeds. She could have lied, kept it vague, and basked in the awe, but she didn't. Truth was her weapon. I grew up near the border, she began, voice calm but firm. Conflict was always around me. Radio transmissions, coded messages, military drills. It wasn't for play. I listened, I learned, I translated. I didn't come here to be underestimated. I came here to serve. The officers exchanged glances, realization dawning. This was no ordinary recruit. Her life had already been a boot camp of survival, and now she was ready to take on real warfare. Within hours, Elena was summoned to the tactical planning room. A squad had been deployed to investigate suspicious activity near the northern perimeter. The intercepted transmission hinted at an ambush. The enemy knew something the base did not. The major briefed the team. We need someone who can intercept and translate any enemy communications in real time. If we misinterpret these codes, we lose men. He looked at Elena. You're up. Elena stepped forward, silent determination in her eyes. Her teammates looked at her with a mix of awe and lingering doubt. One of them muttered under his breath, "She's gonna get us all killed." She ignored him. There was no time for argument. The operation demanded precision, and her mind was already calculating outcomes, probabilities, and contingencies. The sun had barely risen when the squad loaded into the armored transport. Elena sat between two soldiers, headphones on, fingers dancing across the radio keys as she intercepted enemy chatter. The terrain was rough, a mixture of scrubland and rocky hills. Visibility was low, fog curling around the hillsides. Every shadow could conceal an enemy. Every sound could signal danger. The team moved cautiously, following Elena's real-time translations. Her accent, once mocked and ridiculed, was now a lifeline. The enemy commands flowed in her ear. North Ridge. Movement detected. Team Alpha deploy. Target confirmed. Cross-check coordinates. Her voice, calm and precise, directed her squad, coordinating movements like a seasoned commander. Flank left. Cover the ridge. Watch the northeast approach. Her teammates, once scoffing, now followed her instructions without hesitation. The rhythm of mockery had vanished, replaced by a synchronized trust forged in life-or-death circumstances. Suddenly, a burst of gunfire shattered the morning calm. Explosions rocked the ground. The enemy had set up a kill zone just as the intercepted codes had predicted. Chaos erupted. Soldiers shouted, bullets kicked up dust and debris, and smoke curled across the field. Elena's training, her childhood experience, everything she had endured kicked in. She barked instructions. Suppress left. Move. Cover northeast. Don't break formation. Her voice, accented and calm, cut through the panic. A grenade landed near her squad. Without hesitation, she dove, pulling a fellow soldier out of harm's way. The explosion shook the ground, but everyone survived. Her eyes scanned the battlefield. Enemy positions, movement patterns, weak points, all of it was in her mind before she spoke it aloud. Enemy Team Alpha is moving to the high ground. Pin them down before they fire. Her teammates obeyed, firing in precise bursts, pushing the attackers back. Every command she gave was based on real-time translations of enemy radio chatter. For the first time, her peers truly saw her, not as a foreign recruit with a funny accent, but as a soldier, a strategist, a hero. By noon, the enemy was in retreat. Elena's translations had allowed her squad to anticipate every move. Casualties were avoided. Property damage minimized. The base was secure. The major approached her, his face unreadable. He extended his hand. Markovic, you just saved this unit. Your knowledge, your instincts, they're beyond exceptional. Even Sergeant Harris, who had mocked her from day one, found his voice lost. All he could do was nod, a silent acknowledgement of respect. The recruits who had laughed and whispered at her now stared, mouths agape. The chain of mockery was broken, replaced with admiration that ran deep and quiet, the kind that doesn't need words. Elena, as always, remained composed. She didn't revel in praise. She had done what was necessary, and for her, that was enough. Over the next few days, her reputation spread across the base. Officers sought her out for consultations on intercepted transmissions. Recruits shadowed her, eager to learn her techniques. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the squad gathered in formation. Elena stood in the middle, silent. The major approached, handing her a small insignia. This is for your service, Markovic. You've shown bravery, skill, and intellect beyond your years. Wear it with pride. Her peers looked on, silence filling the air. No clapping, no cheers, just a heavy, unspoken respect. The kind that comes after someone has proven themselves in ways that words cannot capture. Even Sergeant Harris gave a subtle nod, his usual gruffness softened by recognition. That night, Elena sat alone, looking out over the training fields. The mockery, the whispers, the stares, they were memories now. She understood something important. Respect wasn't given, it was earned. And when earned, it commanded a quiet power that no insult could ever undo. Her accent, once the source of ridicule, had become her weapon. Her knowledge, once hidden, had become the shield for countless lives. And her calm determination had turned fear into order, chaos into victory. She smiled faintly to herself. They had underestimated her, and she had turned it into a moment that none of them would forget. A week later, the base received a new mission. The enemy was attempting to infiltrate communication lines to disrupt operations across multiple fronts. Once again, Elena was called upon. This time, it wasn't just her skill. They needed her insight to anticipate tactics no one else could interpret. Her role became official: translator, strategist, protector. She stepped into the operations room, headphones on, eyes scanning monitors, fingers moving deftly over the keys. The room fell silent. Everyone waited. They had learned something crucial. When Elena spoke, the world listened. And for the first time, no one doubted her. Months later, the recruits who had mocked her during that first week approached her. No jokes, no teasing. just quiet, respectful admiration. You saved us, one whispered. And taught us how to listen, another added. Elena simply nodded, a faint smile crossing her face. The radio crackled in the background, enemy codes dancing through the waves. She picked up the headphones. Her voice, accented and calm, carried across the room. Coordinates confirmed. Move squad Alpha. Enemy retreating. The room fell silent. Again, not with mockery, not with disbelief, but with respect, the kind that comes from witnessing true skill and unwavering courage. And in that silence, Elena Markovic found her place, not just as a recruit, not just as a translator, but as a soldier whose quiet strength had turned the tide of events, whose accent had become a voice that commanded attention, and whose presence would never again be underestimated.